Tonight, we have to start with something you're rarely ever going to see on this program. We need to thank the mainstream media mob. In their latest rage-filled, psychotic effort to smear President Trump, they accidentally did his campaign and, frankly, the country a huge favor. In fact, the media unintentionally stumbled onto what are serious, credible claims of corruption surrounding one of the president's potential 2020 opponents. That would be sleepy, creepy, crazy Uncle Joe 30330. Now, tonight we'll have full, comprehensive coverage. We're going to go chapter and verse very slowly. You will understand it. It gets a little complicated, but we've got the timeline down perfectly. The story they won't tell you in the media. The real corrupt dealings, the abuse of power by Joe Biden, a member of his family, how they became, incredibly wealthy during his time in the Obama administration, cashing in on his name and contacts. And we're going to also lay it out step by step. So maybe even the media mob, if they pay close enough attention, maybe they'll learn something for once. Now, it all started last week. Reports surfaced about this unnamed whistleblower who was accusing President Trump of making an illicit, unknown promise to Ukraine's president during a recent phone call. Media rushed to judgment again, breathlessly claiming that President Trump, he wanted Ukraine to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. And for days, we witnessed the now predictable, obsessive, compulsive level of hysteria, their breathless reporting. We have seen this now for over 3 years. And now that the Russia impeachment, collusion failed, they're now accusing President Trump of colluding with Ukraine. And we know from John Solomon, Ukraine admits to trying to influence the 2016 election to help Hillary Clinton. But the media mob, they only care about any foreign interference in our elections if they can use it to bludgeon Trump. They cared about Russia and Russian interference, but not the bought and paid for dossier. Many in the media mob predicting this would be the end of the Trump administration. They've been predicting that for 3 years. And as it turns out, the so-called whistleblower wasn't even actually on the call in question. Whoops. This was not the first-hand information we were told by a real whistleblower. In other words, this was hearsay. Every allegation. Look at this. Even fake news CNN buried in a report they did over the weekend the following line: the whistleblower didn't have direct knowledge of the communications. That's called hearsay. That means, who knows what this person heard. And meanwhile, the Ukrainian foreign minister and president denied President Trump put pressure on the Ukrainian president. Denied it. Flat out wrong. And no quid pro quo. And according to the Washington Post, no explicit quid pro quo offered. None. Zero. Here with the very latest, our own Catherine Herridge in Washington tonight. Catherine.
Person familiar with the situation tells Fox News that the whistleblower did not have, quote, firsthand knowledge of the conversation between President Trump and the Ukrainian president, adding the complaint makes clear the whistleblower did not have direct knowledge of that July phone call. That matters because typically multiple U.S. officials are on these calls with the president, indicating the whistleblower was not one of them. It's unclear how the individual obtained a transcript, heard about the call, or learned about it another way. After consulting with the Justice Department, the top lawyer for the acting director of National Intelligence, Joe McGuire, said the complaint was not standard, did not meet the statutory definition of urgent, and congressional notification was not required. Today, speaking to reporters at the UN, President Trump went on the offensive.
Did you tell the Ukrainian leader that they would have the aid only if they investigated Joe Biden and his family?
No, I didn't. I didn't do that. But Joe Biden said it about his son. Joe Biden was very dishonest what he did.
On the whistleblower lacking direct knowledge of the call, a separate source told Fox News that weakens the complaint but does not necessarily undercut all allegations. Democrats want McGuire's testimony on Thursday, Sean.
All right, Catherine, in Washington tonight, we will be joined by the great one, Mark Levin, New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, former mayor also Trey Gowdy, Vice President Pence, all weighing in tonight, along with John Solomon and Peter Schweitzer. They have written and have investigated this extensively. So it's pretty clear the media's 4-day anti-Trump binge was yet another false, totally misguided, and as usual, they got it all wrong moment. But despite so much terrible reporting and propaganda and lies and misplaced hysteria, well, we got a big thanks to the media mob. They've highlighted Joe Biden and the country of Ukraine. Biden's conduct as vice president is now rightly in the spotlight. And as Congressman Devin Nunes put it this weekend, well, this may be the end of Joe Biden's campaign. Let's take a look.
The left knows that Biden's son is a problem for him. This is why when Hillary Clinton was running, these stories first originated back when Hillary Clinton was trying to make sure that Biden didn't get in the race. So now that these have been resurrected, I don't know who came up with the scheme. Maybe there really is. This whistleblower is not a partisan. I mean, we want to hear from that whistleblower, but it sure looks like the scheme has backfired. And this, like I said, I think this is probably the end of Biden's campaign.
End of his campaign.
I really do.
And the congressman is right. Joe Biden and his family should be very nervous tonight, and every American, including President Trump, we should be demanding answers. All right, now let's pay very close attention here, because here is what we know. Now, thanks to the investigative work of reporter John Solomon, along with Peter Schweitzer, will both join us in a moment, we can lay out a very damning timeline. We start in 2014. This is when President Obama appointed his vice president, Biden, to lead the administration's efforts in Ukraine. A few months later, April 2014, Biden's son Hunter, he scored a lucrative position on a board of a massive Ukrainian gas company called Burisma Holdings. Hunter Biden, according to numerous reports, had zero experience in the energy industry, zero experience in the oil and gas sector, zero experience in the country of Ukraine. But this giant Ukrainian oil and gas company reportedly shelled out, $160,000 a month, more than $3 million total, to Biden's private equity firm during this time. A year later, in November of 2015, Joe Biden was advised, get this, by the New York Times that his son was under investigation by Ukraine authorities. And in December of 2015, Joe Biden made his first request to the president of Ukraine to fire the prosecutor leading a corruption investigation into the company, the oil company, Burisma Holdings, that his son Hunter was doing business with and making his son kind of really wealthy, filthy rich. Looks like the classic pay-to-play scheme to me. And in March of 2016, according to the investigative reporting of Solomon, Vice President Biden, he knew this prosecutor was investigating his son and was about to conduct an interview and request that Hunter Biden answer questions about what it was he was doing with this company that he was investigating. So what did then Vice President Biden do? He actually leveraged $1 billion, your tax dollars, U.S. aid, $1 billion, taxpayer dollars, and forced the Ukrainian president at the time to fire this prosecutor. Now, we know this happened because Biden, well, he couldn't help but brag about it on camera. We've got the tape.
We're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
Prosecutor not fired, you're not getting the money. Now, why would a vice president of the United States of America demand that a Ukrainian prosecutor be fired and leverage our tax dollars to insist on the firing? That's a little odd, don't you think? Now, it is U.S. law that all federal officials avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest when they are conducting U.S. foreign policy. And clearly, this was of no concern to sleepy, creepy, crazy, well, sleazy Uncle Joe 30330. It's apparently not concerning to the entire media mob either. We know where they stand on these things. They're now doing their very best to cover for the ailing 2020 contender that is now in second place in the latest Iowa poll. In fact, after running wild with the Russia collusion hoax, 2.5+ years, lies, misinformation, propaganda, conspiracy theories, and a hoax, they haven't learned a thing, because the media mob is now telling you that any accusation of Biden's wrongdoing is a conspiracy theory. No, that would be a lie. Take a look.
What actually happened with the Bidens in Ukraine? We'll fact check the conspiracy theory.
Trump is making a wholly unsubstantiated claim when he alleges corruption by the Bidens. There is no evidence of any wrongdoing.
President Trump has repeatedly suggested, without evidence, that Joe Biden used his VP position to pressure Ukraine to fire the country's top prosecutor.
There's no proof whatsoever that Joe Biden did anything wrong or that Hunter Biden did anything wrong. Does it look great? It doesn't look great, but there's no evidence there. These things just kind of were both occurring.
This could end up being like the 2020 version of birtherism. Ooh, Joe Biden did something bad in Ukraine.
Actually, the proof is in Biden's own words, and the proof is his son. We can't find any evidence that he knew anything about oil, gas, energy, or Ukraine. Well, then why did they pay him millions of dollars? I guess they didn't see the tape of Biden bragging about getting the Ukrainian prosecutor fired by leveraging our tax dollars. And by the way, where I grew up, that kind of sounds like either you do what I say, kind of sounds like a blackmail sort of thing. But that's where I grew up. I won't use that phrase. And maybe they just don't care because it doesn't fit their psychotic, rage, Trump-hating narrative. Now, this weekend, our very own Peter Doocy, he asked Biden. He had an opportunity to ask him a question about this conflict of interest in Ukraine. And there was one angry Uncle Joe 30330. He was not happy about Peter's question. Let's take a look.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. You should be looking at Trump. Trump's doing this because he knows I'll beat him like a drum. And he's using the abuse of power and every element of the presidency to try to do something to smear me. Everybody looked at this, and everybody's looked at it and said there's nothing there. Ask the right questions.
That's the right question. I'd say bingo, Peter Doocy, because why? Oh, the abuse of power would be demanding. Again, why would a vice president of the United States of America be demanding that some Ukrainian prosecutor be fired, or he's going to take $1 billion in your tax dollars home with him, and you got 6 hours to do it? Wow, what Biden said there is not true. Matter of fact, that statement of Peter Doocy is an outright lie. Here are the facts. In July, he told the New Yorker magazine that he has, in fact, spoken with his son about his Ukrainian business deals. Whoops, hard time keeping the story straight. It's kind of hard to keep up with lies sometimes. Now, ultimately, this represents a clear pattern of hypocrisy, projection in the Democratic Party and media. The left accuses President Trump of a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Well, it was actually Vice President Biden issuing the $1 billion quid pro quo. And the left spins in circles about a mere allegation of a promise between the president and the president of Ukraine, but barely yawns when President Obama is saying, tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after the election. Don't tell the American people. Just tell Vladimir, the hostile actor that he is, I'll have more flexibility. Don't tell the American people, though. Yeah, we have that on tape. For 2+ years, the left freaking out about Trump-Russia collusion. Didn't work out that way, did it? But we actually have tape of collusion with somebody who thinks he's talking to a Russian that has dirt on Donald Trump. There he is, the cowardly Schiff, who's caught on tape trying to acquire a compromat on Trump for some Russian pranksters. And what is the nature of the compromise? Picture naked Trump. Did Vladimir see them? Did Vladimir have them? Yeah, but of course, Vladimir see picture naked Trump. We got the tape.
And she met with Trump and she brought him 1 hour Russian girl, celebrity, Olga Buzova, who also known as a person with a strange reputation.
Olga, and how do you spell her name?
Olga Buzova.
And what's the nature of the compromise?
Well, there were pictures of naked Trump.
And so Putin was made aware of the availability of the compromising material?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. We will be back in touch with you through our staff to make arrangements to obtain these materials for our committee and for the FBI, and I appreciate you reaching out to us.
Pictures of naked Trump. They don't exist. Just like the dossier was full with lies. People, hookers, urinating in a bed in the Ritz, Moscow. Yeah, when the FBI finally got around to verifying the dirty dossier that Hillary paid for, likely Russian disinformation, from the beginning, none of it was true. The left also accused the Trump campaign of working with Russia to spread misinformation. Hillary's bought and paid for dirty dossier was proliferated in the media. Well, like conspiracy theorists like Michael Isikoff and David Corn, left-wing hacks that spew any propaganda that's handed to them, and also throughout our federal government by the DNC. Remember, likely disinformation from the get-go. Late in the game, the New York Times caught up with us, finally admitting that. And according to a brand new article from John Solomon, Democrats have a history of enlisting Ukraine in American elections. In 2016, DNC contractors, they attempted to persuade the country of Ukraine to publicly trash Trump's one-time campaign manager, Paul Manafort. They also tried to get the Ukrainian embassy in the U.S. to dig up Russian dirt on then-candidate Trump. Ukraine states that these efforts were rebuffed because, quote, it recognized they were improper efforts to get a foreign government to try and influence the election against Trump and for Hillary Clinton. And Ukrainian prosecutors even tried to hand over evidence of the Democrats' attempt to engage in election interference with a foreign country, but were initially turned away by the DOJ. I'd like to see those. And by the way, while election interference and the mob doesn't particularly care, well, of course not. It's only when Trump does something wrong. No doubt Democrats will be set up to their old tricks in 2020. After all, yeah, Joe 30330 does have some very close ties to Ukraine. Unfortunately for Biden, if Congressman Nunes is correct, the former vice president will never cross the finish line as the party's nominee. By the way, we haven't even mentioned Hunter Biden's trip with his father to China. That deal was $1.5 billion.